Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into a special edition of the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. If you have noticed, if you've been with us for a while, viewed our episodes, whatever, have listened to us, we usually do a nice Monday show in the off season. We break down some great Dynasty content. And that's what we did this past Monday. We went and did some Dynasty talk with the AFC East. But I figured, let's just get a couple more podcasts in. I can't get the guys on every single day. And I want to be able to continue to talk Dynasty with you guys because we don't really write as much on the Fantasy Coaches. I'm sorry. So I want to make sure that we have enough content out there for you guys to really enjoy. So today I'm going to do a little Dynasty 101. Those who might be new to Dynasty might be looking to, get into Dynasty and understand what is Dynasty, what you need to know about it before you start playing, and kind of the basics overall. And that's kind of what I'm here today to talk about. I'm going to be doing some Dynasty 101, breaking down just the basic things you need to know if you're going to ever play Dynasty. And maybe you will and want to play more after this whole show. So we'll start at the top here. Obviously, like I said, it's Dynasty 101. We're going to be talking about every single thing possible from the beginning in terms of you thinking about playing all the way up until your very first rookie draft the following season. So we'll start right here, like I said, at the top. What is Dynasty Fantasy Football? Those who might have never played before have obviously heard what it is. It is basically more of a year-round fantasy football experience. Instead of drafting players every single year, having a brand new team with a bunch of players that you drafted, you don't do that as much. With Dynasty, you draft a team, and yes, your team changes over time, but it is not as rapid and not as huge as it may be your season-long or redraft leagues, however, what terminology you like to use for it. It is a little different overall. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more things you need to know, a lot more in terms of age, contracts, players, rookies, how to handle yourself throughout an entire season, because you're not just playing from September to December. You're playing from January to December every single season. So that's kind of the basics of what Dynasty Fantasy Football is you're controlling a team like a GM, and you're making changes, you're making transactions, you're switching out players, you're trading for players, trading away players. And in terms of just trying to win a championship at the end of the day, gives you that almost that GM feel / coaching feel for Dynasty. So that's the basics of what Dynasty Fantasy Football is. And important factors you need to know. Before even getting into the league, what do you need to know? What things you should be looking out for before you even start up a Dynasty league? The first and most important thing, and I think this is almost as true as, your redraft or your season-long leagues, you have to have the right group of owners. It's very important. It's not just, I have people who will be there for draft day and they draft their team and maybe they'll pay attention for a few weeks, but then they're ghost or disappear, whatever. With Dynasty, you really don't want that. You want someone who's going to be dedicated for a whole year, each and every single year. Now, there might be quieter times in the offseason, and we'll get to there, but you want an owner who, if their season isn't going well, willing to trade you some of their players and vice versa. You want players to be active, trading, picking up players, setting up their lineups, continually trying to build their team to make it better. Because if you have an owner who is not doing that, it kind of just ruins your experience overall, because then some of those owners were like, well, I don't want to play anymore because I messed this team up, I'm going to leave. And then you have to find a new owner to take over a really bad team overall. So having the right owners is very important. Understanding the difference between Dynasty and redraft / season-long leagues is that you're not just playing for that season. You might want to build your team to last you 2 or 3 seasons, compared to just, I'm going to go in all in, just like a redraft league. You're just picking the best possible players to have the best season ever. In Dynasty, you don't necessarily, obviously you want that, but you also want to make sure your team has longevity, is able to build through an entire season. So it's not just, 2023 season's over, I'm done. I did my job. No, you're ready and you're actively trying to get ready for the next season because you know that you're continuously trying to build this team to the best. Trades. I mentioned trades a bunch of times already. Trades are so important for Dynasty. I have leagues where people have never traded before in their lives, and it just takes the fun out of it. Now, I wouldn't say just trade to trade. You don't want to do that, but you want to trade to build and make your team better in the long run. And it's making trades. It's so much more fun because, and obviously in your redraft or season long leagues, you don't trade as much. There's not a lot of trading going on because everyone's trying to win still, and if you do trade, sometimes people are saying, well, this team's a bad team. This is a good team. It's collusion, whatever. In Dynasty, there's some of that, but it's not as bad because there are teams who are getting rid of their bad players because they want potential draft picks or young players who haven't broke out yet, who they believe in and are waiting for them to take that next level. So it is a little different in that terms. You obviously have different kinds of level drafts. Your waiver wire experience is going to be a little bit different. And the trading aspect is in the general sense, and I'll get to more about these trades a little bit later in the show. Next up, understanding, learning about rookies. Now, in terms of your, season-long leagues, you know about the best rookies every single year. You're hear from the experts and analysts like, oh, you got to draft this guy in the 3rd or 4th round, or you got to draft this guy in the late teens, or whatever it may be. And these players because they're getting talked up a lot about constantly because of their opportunity or what team they landed on or talent, whatever. But you have to do rookie drafts every single year, and that's going to be a little different where you're going to have to know some guys who aren't really, on the radars of most season-long redraft leagues because maybe they're stuck behind a couple different people here, or they just haven't got that opportunity to shine just yet. I mean, if you were in a super flex, that means you start 2 QBs and you didn't hear about Brock Purdy, and you happen to draft him in your team, you wouldn't do that in a regular super flex season long league, but you might do that in a dynasty league and understanding some talent, even though his talent wasn't the best coming out. But if you might have saw something different than some of us might have done, boom, you have a guy on your bench that you drafted in the 4th round of your rookie draft because there's only 4 rounds that you potentially have a potential starter going into next season. Now that could change as of now, the recent news, obviously, with his injury. But before that, you might have been looking really good to have that kind of player on your team. And that's why it's important to do a deep dive into these rookies each and every single year because you really want to be able to pick out those gems. You'll get the top players, that's for sure. But you really want to get those gems that could really help put your team to the next level. And that's a really cool thing about understanding and learning more about rookies. Again, Senior Bowl is going on this week. I think we might have an episode next week about the Senior Bowl and some of the players there. It's important to understand these rookies. Next up, how to manage your team. You need to be able to show you know what you're expected of in your team. You have to understand, am I contending? Am I rebuilding? How do I want my team to go? Am I going to have to lose a position to gain another position on my team here? You're worrying about how to manage your team to have a consistent elite lineup, but quality depth, which something in redraft leagues and season-long leagues, you don't have to worry about much because you could just go pick up players and they can fill in and more likely get you, what you need each and almost every single week. And in Dynasty, you don't have that kind of waivers to go out there, just grab a guy and plug him in. And you have to ensure that your bench is set and ready to go in case of injuries. And you just want to have that talent there sitting there. And you need to be able to make sure you manage your team throughout an entire season. All right, over to my next slide here. Now, if you're just listening, it may be Spotify, iTunes, always go check out our YouTube channel, the Fantasy Coaches. We always do a great slideshow showing up some cool things there in terms of, visual things in terms of just listening to the podcast. But again, we appreciate you listeners as well. New things for Dynasty, things you might not have heard or know of from not playing before. Bigger benches. Most, if you play in a regular fantasy league, you're playing with a 5 or 6, 7-man bench. In Dynasty, you're up to 14, 15 different bench spots. You're going to have a bigger, deeper bench. More players on your team to have to worry about. Draft picks. You obviously don't have draft picks in terms of having to trade them. And now it depends on if you're in keeper leagues and things like that. But, you have your draft picks that you draft your team, and that's it. You never hear about that until the following year. Well, throughout Dynasty, you hear about draft picks all year round because these rookie picks, because you're only drafting rookies after your startup, you're only drafting rookies each and every single year. So those draft picks really do become important for your fantasy team because you want to know if you should be selling your draft picks or you should be buying draft picks, and it's going to be continuously there for you. Now, waiver wire, I already mentioned the waiver wire. It's smaller. You're not going to see guys on the bench out there who are going to help you win a championship. It's very few and far in between. Maybe every once in a great while, you get one guy in the entire league that actually ends up making it your roster and you end up helping you win. In season-long leagues, you could have picked up some other players, guys people might have dropped in mid-season and end up performing really well, like Justin Jefferson a few years ago. Now, that's more in season-long leagues. People might have dropped him. And obviously, Dynasty, you're not going to do that. You're going to have Justin Jefferson and deal with his slump that he had his rookie season until he just burst it out. In season-long leagues, you can drop a guy like that and then, probably shouldn't have done that, but you had to because of your smaller benches. Taxi squads. Now, taxi squads are great. Again, like I said, learning and understanding rookies are important. And taxi squads is a great way to put young players who might not develop as quickly as some of the guys that are coming out nowadays, like the Jamar Chases and obviously Justin Jeffersons, guys you can throw on your bench, let them wait a year or two. A guy that comes to mind is Joshua Palmer. Really didn't, get much his rookie season. You keep him on your taxi squad. He's not involved in your starting lineups. He's just out there that you can hold on to. Boom. What happens this year? He ends up having a pretty decent season. And he's somebody if you held on to, obviously in your taxi squad, he performed for you this coming season at times. Obviously, trading becomes a much bigger factor because you're not just trading player for player like you do in redraft leagues. You might be trading player for a draft pick. So you might not see that instant return on your investment as you would in a season or redraft league. You're like, I just got a draft pick. He's not going to help me out for another year, maybe 2 years. And season-long leagues, you're going to get that player back and he's going to produce for your team. And obviously, age and contracts. Now, that's not really a real thing, but it's something that you need to understand. There's a point where you don't want to draft a player or you want to have a player on your team because, like running backs. After 27, it's really hard to want to have those kind of players on your team. So you might be looking to trade them off your team. And that's kind of the point. Because of their age, you might want to get rid of them now. In season-long leagues, yeah, that's a factor, but it's still like, I'm going to draft this guy. He could produce still. It's not a big deal. And at the end of the season, boom, he's off my team. Doesn't matter anyway. In Dynasty, if you have a 27, 28-year-old running back, you're actively trying to get things like that off your team. Contracts, same thing. Understand who's in a contract season. Now, this can be, useful, obviously, for season-long or redraft leagues, but you also want to know, like, hey, this guy's about to end his contract. Does he have a chance for another team after this? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he isn't. Something like Derrick Henry. He's going to be 30 years old this coming season. He's in the last year of his contract. Now, it also works with the running back and the age thing, but does he see another contract after this year? Who knows? And if he doesn't, then you just have a player in your team who's just not an NFL team. Like in a redraft league, if he's in a final year's contract, it might be you draft him and that's about it, and boom, he's off your team at the end of the year. In Dynasty, you have to deal with those players who are on contract years, which could be beneficial because if they're in a contract year, especially if they're younger, they usually produce at a higher level. So you might want to grab those kind of guys or vice versa. All right. And over to the startup. Now that you've understood the basics of Dynasty, what you should really look for when you start playing Dynasty, let's start actually talking about what happens when you do a startup draft. Now, there's many things you can do. And my personal favorite is to have 2 separate drafts. You have one for current veterans, anyone who was playing last year is considered a veteran, and then one for rookies. So if you're looking at 2023, right now, the 2023 draft players that are going to be drafted in the 2023 NFL draft, they're considered the rookies now. And so you make a veteran draft, and then you do a rookie draft afterwards. And it's a lot of fun because obviously you get to draft twice, and who doesn't love drafting twice? Now, there are people who combine the draft with rookies and veterans. You can definitely do that, obviously. People wait until maybe after the rookies are getting on the platform or after the NFL draft, and then the rookies are there, and you can do that. Before that, people might just have used kickers and do it that way, and they use them as draft picks, and you can still have 2 separate drafts. But then some people obviously do it with both rookies and veterans. A lot of different things you can do there. It's kind of fun. I like keeping them completely separate, just because I like having 2 different drafts to deal with. And I don't want to have to say, well, I want my forward rookie picks and that's it. No matter where they're at, if you combine it with using kickers as a placeholder, you might not get your rookie picks as much, or people just go in all on the rookies. I don't like it as much that way personally. Now I'm going to go talk more about, the 2 separate drafts and how you can handle that. Obviously, you can randomize the order. That's a lot. It's just, simple and easy. Oh, you get this pick in this draft, and you get this pick in this draft. It is what it is. Or you get a draft pick in the veteran draft, and then you get the opposite in the rookie draft. People do that, or just do something fun. Anything you would do for a normal redraft season long league, you can do the same thing. My personal favorite is Derby style in terms of doing a startup draft for Dynasty. Basically, the way this works is that I come up with a random list of every owner, and then one by one in order, that owner gets to pick whether he wants the draft pick first in the veteran draft or in the rookie draft. So I could end up with the 101. And we're just in the middle of a startup right now that I had the 101 in the veteran draft, but then I had the 111 in the rookie draft that's going to happen later in May. So it kind of makes it more fair in that sense. So it's kind of cool to do that. I really do enjoy doing a draft in that play style. So Derby style, if you've ever heard of it, definitely a fun way to go about it. All right. In terms of the actual startup draft, and I'm eventually going to do another podcast that kind of explains more strategies in terms of that sense, but I just wanted to give a basics overall, what you should look for in drafts. Now, the best way to do a startup draft is to go in with a plan and completely throw it away once you get it, because you just don't know what's going to happen. People are going to take things a different way, a different approach, and you're going to have your strategy going to get thrown all over the place. Early rounds, you want to get those star players. Obviously, you want to get players who are impactful, someone who's going to make your team last for quite a long time. Again, you want to have players that have longevity in those early rounds. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, young RBs, young tight end. You don't really want to get those aged players early on because you're just hurting yourself in the long run. In the middle rounds, that's when you take a little bit of risks there. You maybe grab players who are more impactful for the season because you have your youth, you have your long-term longevity. You want to grab players who can help you win this season, because an ultimate goal is to win a fantasy championship. And you want to do that in those middle rounds. And then late rounds, the best way I can describe late rounds is look at players in their situations. And if this person gets hurt, who gets that next spot? Oh, this person does. Who has the talent to actually overcome their situations? Look for those guys. Dearness Johnson, Cordell Patterson, guys who had the talent, but you just didn't think of in that nature because, they're buried behind players. He's old now, blah, blah, blah. But, if he got the starting job, say he did, he actually might do a lot of good work here. And guys who have actual talent is a way to go. And also go youthful at that point. Go back to the youth. Don't take an aging player just because, maybe he'll get me 600 yards of receiving on the season or something like that. Like a Cedric Wilson right now. He's 26, 27 years old. He's not the young sprout anymore. But is he really going to perform for my team over the next few years? I doubt it. I doubt that he's going to do anything great. You want to go for that youthful route there. And that's the best way I can kind of describe how a startup draft should go for you. You try to avoid running backs early. That's the way I like to do it. Don't go and invest into too much running backs early, because I'd rather invest in the wide receivers and then use those wide receivers to get those running backs that you might want later. All right, the Dynasty Circle of Life. And I should have put in the word trade, but I didn't. So this is more of the Dynasty Trade Circle of Life. So basically with this, and if you see it on the YouTube channel, you can see a more of a visual sense of things here. It's not a circle, even though I said it's a circle, but it is a circle. I didn't have the opportunity to go and actually draw a circle for us. But there's different values in terms of where veterans are the most valuable and the least valuable. Same with the draft picks. So right now we're in the area in which draft picks are very valuable in fantasy. Everybody wants the rookie class draft picks. Everyone wants those first round picks, maybe second round picks right now. And it's going to go from now into your rookie draft. Now that might not be until May or June, July, whatever, how you guys do it. But more typically, a lot of rookie drafts do happen in May. So people are trading for those. People want those draft picks. They want the young, fresh rookies, the new guys who have that potential to be elite talents. And that really pushes down veterans, especially aging veterans. People don't want them on their team, and they're look for any reason to get them off their team before the season starts. And that's when they're at their lowest right now. You could probably get a good veteran who isn't young anymore, who can still produce maybe a season or two more for you, and as a cheaper value, because we'll talk about why their highest value is, but they don't have a lot of value going on currently right now. In June to August, and this varies for each individual's draft and how they handle it, but rookie picks are usually the lowest. After the rookie draft is over, no one's talking about rookie picks because those are done with. 2024 rookie picks a whole year away. No one cares about that. It's the season. We're getting closer and closer to the start of the NFL season. So rookie picks are at an all-time low. So again, good time to buy the future year picks, aka 2024 picks. Good time to buy 24 picks now. Even after the rookie draft, people are looking to get into the season and win games, not look for, I want to build my team with a bunch of rookies for next year, even though I have to go through the season first. And in the same sense, veterans, they're at a more of a medium value, I would say. People are going to, start getting hyped out with training camp and everything in between. So, you might not have that opportunity to buy somebody low because, we know what their position is. We know they're going to be starting this year after the rookie draft's over. This rookie's going to start or whatever. This veteran, he's got a good chance to play this year. People are, buying into the hype of the season. So their value is still there. You could still get it, but it's starting to grow. September to December, that's when veterans are the most valuable players to people. And people are trying to win games, and they're like, you could have traded probably could have got a first-round pick for Zeke Elliott sometime mid-season in this past 2022 year. Now, if you ask for a first, people will laugh in your face. That's how quick your value drops because people are trying to win. They're trying to get those proven talents on their team, and they don't care about rookie picks as much. Now, people won't just trade rookie picks to trade rookie picks. Some people might. I'm not one of those. I want the best possible situation. So to me, at that point, my rookie picks are still somewhat valuable, depending on how good my team really is. If I know I'm going to be one of the last two teams in the league, me selling off rookie picks, draft picks, 100%. But if I'm struggling to make the playoffs and I'm like, well, if I do trade my first round pick and I do get in the playoffs, I might not make it that far. So I might not be willing to as much trade a rookie pick for that sense. But again, it happens every single different year. This whole way in terms of this circle of trade value life, it fluctuates, and you have to take the best possible route to make those trades right for you. And you don't want to make a bad trade. You don't want to trade your 2023 first round pick right now for Michael Carter, and you don't want to trade your 2024 first round pick in September or November for Tom Brady, even though we know Tom Brady's done. We'll see. But you don't want to trade. You don't want to make a bad trade based on the value. Make sure you understand the value of when you're trading players, because someone will finesse you if you don't understand the best time to trade. Do not take a bad deal because they're trying to fleece you. Get your value worth when it's time for each in terms of veterans and draft picks. All right, how to handle the dynasty in season here. All right, so the way to handle the dynasty in season, obviously you start your season off pretty well, pretty quickly here. That's the best way to look at it. You're going to start off trying to win, unless you have a game plan that you're rebuilding and you're not going to really play this year, which, I really hate doing that because then you just kind of wasted your league fee in just to do nothing. And I don't like that. I always like to try to win. And if I do well, then I'll make a decision after the first 4 weeks. I think after week 5, you have a real understanding of what your team is going to do. You can wait until week 7, until that's half the season, and then say, all right, well, I'm going to start tanking now. And if you're tanking, then please don't tank the tank. Try to keep continuing to win. But the best thing to do is sell off your older veteran players and stock up on those rookie picks then. Get your first-round picks for next year. Get your first-round picks for 2 years from now, because people are going to be wanting those players who can produce for them now to help them win a championship. And again, vice versa. If you're doing very well in the early part of the season here, start looking and see where your team can make improvements. Can I use another running back? Well, this guy's got Nick Chubb. Do I want to give up my first-round pick for Nick Chubb? Potentially. If Nick Chubb's having a great year and I really one running back away, I'll make that trade if that's where I'm at right now in my fantasy year. He's getting up there in age now, so that first-round pick is kind of a little shaky, but I'm trying to make that next leap to be actually win my championship. And that's the way to look at it. You have to value where your team is each and every single week, because as your team either gets better or worse, you want to start adjusting to that and either continuing the trend to make it worse or make improvements to make your team a championship-ready team. All right, and on to the non-startup offseason. So now you finish your season, you have a champion. Maybe you're the champion. That would be fantastic, obviously. And now you're into your next offseason. Now you have to figure out where your team is. I always like to compare it with the champion and see how their team is stack up between the two. Can you compete with that player right now if you had to? If you can't, well, you have to continue to find ways to rebuild your team. Hopefully, you did all your rebuilding and what you need to do in the season. Because if you're a rebuilding team in the offseason, you probably have want to get rid of these bad players and then so you can then have all these draft picks. Because if you do it now, and like I said, I'm in a lot of off seasons right now who no one wants my veteran players. And if I had a bad team this year and I didn't trade my good players away in the season, I'm sitting at a bad spot here. You got to have to, at this point, if you really want to make a move, you might have to lose a trade in terms of the value. But that's why you always trade in season over the first off in the off season. Don't make a bad trade early on, or at least if you're going to make a trade players who had a successful end of season, players who dominated in the fantasy playoffs. Trade those players away now. If you really want to get good value for picks or whatever, or vice versa, if you want to acquire a player because you like what they did at the end of the year, that's when you trade your picks away. But just be cautious of what your values are because you don't want to give up too much in a very poor time of year because we know that free agency is coming up. Things completely could change everything possible. The NFL draft is going to come. That could completely change the value of every single player just like that. So you really want to be cautious in the first 3 months of the year on what you do. I like to make the trades available for all my owners right as soon as this fantasy season is over and allow them to trade. But I don't like to trade as much in the early part of the offseason because I want to know where people are going to land and I want to know what team is going to draft what rookie. And that's when I start and then scheming up my trades to really try to either improve my team for a championship or start rebuilding my team for the future. And last but not least, your rookie draft. So what do you do when you get to your rookie drafts? Obviously, it's a lot of fun. And that's probably where the picks are the most valuable possible because people want those players because they've seen them in the NFL draft and seen where they've gone, and people want them so badly. But the way to handle rookie drafts, and I've learned this over my last 4 years of playing now, is that you don't always have to go or don't always need to go after a need compared to talent. And it's happened to me 3 years ago with Keyshawn Vaughn from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I had a need at running back, and at that time, where my pick was. I went with a lot of Keyshawn Vaughns. I was like, oh, he's got the starting job now. I didn't have him as high on many lists, but that was the same year that guys like Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins fell past that, who have a better opportunity. So you really want to see and value where your values are for your players here, because yes, you might need a running back, but if maybe just go based off talent. And that's what I've been doing more recently in my drafts. And it seemed to be more beneficial for my teams in a long-term value because I'm not just going for need. I think going for need in the later rounds make more sense. But in the early rounds, I like to go for talent and then use need as a need basis here, and usage and opportunity are where I like to thrive in terms of looking at rookie drafts overall. I think that's the best way to describe how to handle a rookie draft is to go for talent, look at your need, and then determine at that point, what's the best player for me to grab right now to help my team in the long term? Because even if you have 7 running wide receivers, you can always trade one of them for a running back later. So that is the best way to possibly describe how rookie draft should probably go. People have obviously their own opinions on it, but I think it's the best way to keep your team longevity continuing for a long time. So that is the end of my presentation today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't want to say presentation, my podcast, my show today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I do love talking Dynasty here. I would love to do an episode at some point. If anyone has any Dynasty talk they want to talk about, just hit me up over on Twitter at Coach Stephen P. or over on Coach's Fantasy on our main Twitter page here. More than happy to sit down and talk with you guys about your Dynasty team. Or if you have any questions about your leagues or Dynasty in general, please feel free to hit me up there, either place. And I plan on doing a lot more of these little short podcasts in between here. Next week, we're going to probably do a Senior Bowl podcast talking about some of the rookies that are out there because we don't have enough time on our main pod to get to the nitty gritty here because we have so much other information we want to get out to you guys. So always hit us up if you have any questions. Please feel free to. Please subscribe. Please give us a like. Please follow us. We'd all really appreciate it. We're just trying to help you guys win championships for the long run. So thank you guys for all listening in today. Tune in until next time and have a good one.